You might have seen the video that has been presented earlier that was part of our collaboration, if I may call, as a research between our staff in PGM, Dr. Sean David Gayulet, who has been traveling to University of the Philippines to do his research. And as part of that research, he produced a film which telling a story and life of Professor Ramon Santos, who has been a prominent figure in the Philippines, if not to say the whole Southeast Asian. So today we will hear from Professor LaVerne de la Peña how things are in the University of Philippines, how are the research and the idea of the music that is integrated into the contemporary music making in the Philippines today. And the title that Professor LaVerne de la Peña would be talking about is Traditions and Innovation, People, Places, and Practices of Bamboo Music in the Philippines. So I hand the microphone to you. That's shorter than 2 minutes. Wonderful. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for that gracious introduction. And thank you for the President for your yeah, sorry. As a start, I hope you don't mind that I sit down. I saw the table here, I saw chairs, so that's an invitation to sit down. And I suppose this is going to be an informal session, quite a little different from what we have gotten used to PGVIS. As a start, allow me to say my gratitude for and honor for being invited. Again, like Anatai has said, this is the 9th year. I've attended probably 7 of those. And it's a distinct pleasure again to have been invited to say the keynote, more so the opening one. This is really, I have no words for that. So again, thank you very much. As a start, allow me to introduce to you the 2 institutions that I am representing today. First, I am the Dean of the UP College of Music, which will be turning 106 next month. 106 years by itself is an impressive length of time to exist and survive. And we are indeed proud of the many achievements throughout all those years. However, for an institution founded under the American colonial government, as a conservatory molded after European ideals and intended to teach the colonized the musical language of the colonizer, we have faced the difficult struggle of remaining relevant and even more so as a leader in these changing times. And so we value the many things we can learn from a school like PGVIM, a small but vibrant institution, 91 years our junior, but at the very cutting edge of innovative music pedagogy in our region. I am happy to be here again today in this international symposium that has become the leading venue for the exchange of extraordinary, perhaps subversive, musical ideas. I am also the director of the UP Center for Ethnomusicology, and let's just make that short, the Center for Ethno, a research and archival center separate but also housed within the UP College of Music and also officially established in 1997. However, the history of the center goes all the way back to the 1950s with the work of the Filipino ethnomusicologist Jose M. Maceda, then the chair of the Department of Asian Music, which is today the Department of Musicology. What is significant here is that way back in the 1950s, there was already this vision of looking within Asia for alternative forms of musical thinking and doing. Starting his career as a concert pianist, Jose Maceda, his dates are 1917 and he passed away in 2004, trained in Paris as a pianist under Alfred Cortot. And later in the US from the 1930s to the 1950s, he was in fact probably our greatest expert in piano French music in the country. It was around the 1950s that he encountered the discipline of ethnomusicology and pursued this in earnest, and then finally earning his PhD from the University of California in Los Angeles in 1963. As the country's first ethnomusicologist, he returned to the Philippines and set up the Department of Asian Music, as I mentioned earlier, although his original appointment was a professor in piano. Again, we see here the disruptive behavior of certain musical geniuses, disrupting the status quo. In the college, Maceda recruited researchers and student assistants to mount the ambitious project which he called an ethnomusicological survey of the Philippines, which lasted close to about 4 decades and resulted in a sizable collection of artifacts, recordings, and paper documents. This collection will become the foundation of the Center for Ethno, or the UP Center for Ethnomusicology. Many of you here, however, know probably Maceda as a modernist composer who used his research finding as the basis for his artistic creation. It was in the early 2019 when no less than our college secretary, Dr. Joy Guadalupe, introduced to me the Bamboo Musical Instruments Research Project, or for short, the BMI Research Project. It was a research and development program supposed to be for 3 years, comprising of 4 projects involving various government agencies. Let me flash some slides here. The rationale was that the Department of Science and Technology realizes that we have creative industries in the Philippines, but we are not exploiting it to gain economically. And that there are bamboo musical instruments in the Philippines, but these are only showcased during specific cultural performances, and they are not, the BMI, or bamboo musical instruments, are not produced in commercial quantities, except probably one, the flute. And of course, bamboo musical instruments have been already introduced into the Department of Education K-12 curriculum. This is the program objective: generate information and technology on the indigenous and innovative processing of bamboo for musical instruments. Okay. And this is Project 1. The identification of bamboo species, the documentation of the BMI used and produced, and established and analyzed the value chain. Honestly, all this talk of R&D, commercialization, value chain, upscale processing, etc., made my head spin. As an ethnomusicologist, my knee-jerk reaction is to be suspicious of such language. Many of my own professors come from the old school of ethnomusicology, where you are admonished not to interfere with the natural flow of culture, okay? Much less commercialize the culture. Perhaps good-intentioned, but surely problematic by itself, especially when viewed with 21st century lenses. I remember my professor, an expert in Pacific dance, Adrian Kepler, coming in to the class of my ethnomusicology seminar and flashing this slide. Okay, sorry, before that. These are the project again. So we're involved in Project 1. Project 2 is following year. Project 3 is this. Okay, and Project 4. And this is the beneficiaries. And this is what the program will offer. Okay? But I was talking about what my professors in the ethnomusicology discipline were advising us again, and that is not to interfere with the flow of culture. So my teacher came in with this slide. The prime directive. I don't know if you've heard of Star Trek, of course, it's still on. But the prime directive of Star Trek, or otherwise known as Starfleet Order Number 1, is the prohibition on interference with other cultures and civilizations representatives of Starfleet encounter in their exploration in the universe. Those of you who are Trekkies know this. They cannot interfere with history, so such that history will change, even if they travel back in time. Of course, anthropology and ethnomusicology has come a long way from those days, but certain disciplinal biases are hard to let go, particularly when you deal with bureaucrats and technocrats. In fairness, my own professor, Ricardo Tremillos of the University of Hawaii, would always tell us before we go out to do fieldwork, and this is his advice to us: remember who you are and remember who you represent, which I think is better than the Star Trek prime directive. Okay, going back to the BMI research. So the Center for Ethno was tasked to do the ethnographic component of the research. Okay. It was to produce ethnographic reports, which will be combined into an anthology presenting the bamboo instruments of the areas identified based on the criteria of having a long-standing practice of bamboo musical tradition within the community. The ethnographic report anthology will be accompanied by audio-video documentation, as well as educational modules that are vertically aligned with the K-12 curriculum. I hope I have a chance to show you some of these educational modules that we have developed based on this research. Okay. The ethnographic report seeks to document the tradition and dynamism of bamboo musical instruments, and the collections will be lodged into the Center for Ethno, while the accompanying teaching modules will enable the teachers in basic education to use the materials gathered from the study in the curriculum and instruction. I will center mainly on the book, the output in this talk, but later on show you as well the modules. Okay, so for this task, the ethnographic data gathering, we assembled 15 teams comprised of about 30 data gatherers and transcribers, 31 resource persons, local experts and cultural bearers were interviewed or called to the FGD. We targeted 17 field sites, although only 15 was completed, and I'll explain in a bit why. Of course, COVID had a lot to do with that. And a total of 102 documented instruments. Now, part of the difficulty was this thing called free and informed prior consent, or FPIC, that is mandated in our country by the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples. It is intended to protect the property rights of indigenous peoples in both tangible and intangible heritage. So that means before being allowed to document, say for example, the music of one community, the researchers must first meet with its tribal elders and negotiate by explaining his or her objectives of the project. The leaders may ask for certain requirements, do this ritual, sacrifice a cow, and so on. Okay. You can imagine how the process can be mired in corruption or politics, or just, another bureaucratic label. Okay? Again, good intention, but the result is something else. In our case, it did not help that COVID prevented also this kind of gatherings. And so the FPIC, or the free and prior informed consent, was not secured in several locations. So for instance, in this map here, a very important section, do you see my, okay, it's the north, the Cordillera region would have a very rich area for bamboo musical instruments, but we cannot include it in the output because we were not able to come to an agreement with the leaders there. In fact, just last night, one of the research staff was calling me and asking me, what are the videos that you will be showing today here? Because they wanted to be sure that the videos that I showed you are authorized under the FPIC agreement. And so later on today, I will have to switch to the authorized videos. I will leave the PowerPoint and go to the authorized videos. Okay, these are the areas visited. As you can see, some are canceled due to lack of FPIC. Some others are completed, but no FPIC was secured, for example, in number 1. Okay. An interesting thing there was we interviewed 2 very important experts who were from the Kalinga people, but they were innovators. So they innovated a lot with their products, and they were very popular all over the world, in fact, being invited. But the tribe said they don't represent us anymore. So that's the problem there with this kind of law. They did not sign it because, well, they're not supposed to represent them anymore. At the same time, they cannot represent themselves as free artists. Okay, let me now focus on the book. The book's title is Tradition and Innovation, People, Places, and Practices of Bamboo Music in the Philippines. And you see here the front and back cover. It's not out yet. It's going to be out soon, in about 2 weeks. We will launch, 3 weeks. And I probably can give you more detail later on how to acquire this book. But the Department of Science and Technology, which is the funding agency, required us to do a publication, not an academic one, but one that is for general public. In fact, the description was a coffee table book, but I probably would refuse such a label. I would call this publication more of a source book. And so throughout this presentation today, I will give you show you some of the pages just to give you an idea of the contents. For the essays, the main chapters, we commissioned a popular writer whose name is John Joseph Coronel, who was able to write in terms that a layman, not academicians, would understand and appreciate. And it was designed by John Cinco, an multi-awarded artist based in New York, Filipino artist. But what is important is, in this book, we do not only focus on the instrument per se. I guess the ethnomusicologist in me insisted that we are not going to look at products, but we are going to look at processes. That means the people behind it, individuals, people who have innovated, people who have carried on the tradition and their daily life, where they're from, the kinds of challenges that they are facing. So that was my insistence as an ethnomusicologist. Ever notice, for example, those of you who teach or study, that when we take Western history of music, the focus is on individuals, right? The genius composer, the genius artist, and so on. But when we teach world music, it's always the music of Thailand or the music of Indonesia. Like all Thai are the same, and like all Indonesians are the same. Okay, so individual artists and craftsmen remain anonymous. And so this is something that we wanted to work against. Okay, I'll just show you some of the contents very quickly. This is the table of contents and some of the pages there. Okay, and at the end there's a glossary of instruments showing a picture of the bamboo instrument and a brief description and where it's located. Now, before I continue sharing about the book, allow me again, by explanation, talk about the two main types of traditional music which are widely distributed in the Philippines. So there are two types, those that are made of bronze or metal, and those that are made of bamboo. The first type comprises mostly of various types of gongs. They are either handheld flat gongs that we generically refer to as gangsa in the northern Philippines, and they continue to survive and are being used there. And there are the knobbed gongs in the south, such as the kulintang and the agong, and this is common all over Southeast Asia. And it still exists in Mindanao and some parts of the central Philippines. On the other hand, a wide variety of bamboo instruments are found all over the archipelago. These include percussive tubes, blades, pipes, trumpets, horns, played mostly as ensemble instruments. But also popular are various types of flutes, either played through the nose or through the mouth, zithers, mouth harps for solo performers. And apart from the metal and bamboo instruments, you would find a number of lutes with wooden bodies, which were once widespread, but now survive mostly in the island of Palawan and Mindanao. But yet, generally speaking, the most prevalent types are the bronze and the bamboo instruments. Now, the distinction between the metal and the bamboo instruments is significant. Metallurgy was an acquired, highly specialized technology in the past, and the extraction of materials from the earth required uncommon expertise. And so for this reason, gongs are highly valued properties, and they signal wealth and social prestige. In the north, for example, the gongs are considered heirloom objects and used in the past for bride price. When you get married, you have to pay the bride's family through gongs. Or you can buy land with it. A rice terrace. You can use gongs to buy that. In the south, for example, the kulintang ensembles perform in the homes of affluent patrons, but for the enjoyment of the entire community. I think we have some kulintang music featured in the concerts here with the AYE. The sounds of gongs in the north summon not just the living guest, but also deities and spirits of ancestors to large ceremonies where liquor and meat are shared. So until today, the playing of gongs is highly restricted by elders. You cannot just play gongs whenever you want, because when you do that, the deities and the elders will come, and you have to be prepared with animal sacrifice and liquor. But can you imagine how they practice? So there's no idea of practicing, right? Or sometimes they do, but the elders would shoot them away. They can practice far, far, far from the village. So whatever happens, the village is not affected. Okay. Now, in contrast, until today, the bamboo playing of gongs is highly restricted for the fear of offending these beings. No? Furthermore, gong manufacture continues to be a highly guarded process by the artisan families. No? Today, they continue making gongs, but it's a total secret. No? And there have been issues of this family stealing the knowledge from this family because he got the other drunk, and so on and so on. So in contrast, bamboo instruments were born of simple technology, much older than gong making, perhaps, but simpler. And because of the type of grass, the bamboo grows everywhere in the islands, the material is cheap and widely available. Bamboo musical instruments, like other everyday bamboo implements, are temporal objects, meaning they're temporary. They can be replaced when you damage it accidentally, or when you lose it, no problem, just replace it. These are performed mostly in informal gatherings as a form of public entertainment, or intimately between couples as an expression of love, or in solitude when one is whiling away the hours while shepherding carabaos or watching the rice fields. Thus, if the highly priced bronze instruments signify power and prestige, the more accessible bamboo instruments represent communality and personal affection. Because of the absence of restrictions associated with bronze instruments, bamboo instruments easily lend themselves to innovation and creativity. Let me now show you the kinds of bamboo musical groups that we have discovered, or we have documented during this BMI research project. And I grouped them into four. You will not see this grouping, of course, in the book. In the book, it's grouped according to region. Okay? But I grouped them accordingly: indigenous, colonial, adapted, or modified, decolonial and hybrid, and last, invented and borrowed. Okay. So the indigenous instruments grouping pertain to bamboo musical instruments practiced by indigenous communities that may have predated European contact. That's for the Philippines, the pre-European contact was 16th century, but continues to be practiced today. So it's ancient, at the same time contemporary. Their music is intimately connected to their daily life and worldview. So this is first from the Tiboli of Lake Cebu, and I cannot play this video because I'm not authorized to, so let me switch to a, okay. Let me go to my desktop, sorry for this. Hang on.
Ni mo na ni slowly. Ni sim ko ano ni kosok wan tao magaw ovele am ni sim ko pakai no ni vele la kai mahi la black maan kosok no ni ni tai tiop glundu gawan gam sut lenos.
Ni sim nong bom ganu ni sakwan gam besita sut na tilo kami tembo nisim pun uni nisim nonggong ganuni sakon mokon bong yu
nisim kumbing mo ganuni kosok gal nakau bulun ni ganuni ni kosok nakau bulun sapungo nga baling uni kumbing betik ni bon sa ubong. Ni simon là lưu đồi sau tôi gọi là tạo ਸਕੂਨ ni kawan không tạo lawa belem ane lagan kion la nuniam bele ni ko holo e muni do nuniam na beto ganan gafat yung de plano na de sentulon yo na galatamolok
Okay, sorry. You saw the tenonggong, which is the most sacred instrument there. It's really made of wood, but the sticks are made of bamboo. Okay. Oops, I'm not supposed to play that. And you saw the kumbing and the sludoy. The kumbing, of course, the jaw harp or the juice harp, the mouth harp. And it's played in their myth when during the lunar eclipse. In the lunar eclipse, there's a giant, they believe there's a giant python, similar to the Naga, that swallows the moon. And so the kumbing is supposed to protect you, the moon and the earth from that. But the kumbing is not a sacred instrument. It's a female instrument. The instruments are divided into male and female. The others are the klintang sokong right here, which is a stamping tube. The sludoy is a bamboo zither, as a tube zither. Okay. And the dweg a is a bowed lute with a coconut body and a bamboo arm. Okay. Now we go to another one, the bagobo tagabawa. Again, I cannot play this, so I have to switch.
magtugtog ka ni ini special kaayo tungod kay ma-enjoy ka basta magtugtog ka kawayan kung mayroon kang kaguol mayroon kang kalungkutan mawala basta magtugtog ka ng kawayan.
Importante gud sa mo nga aduna gid kaugalingon namo nga bambu saon hinimo namo kaugalingon gid gikan sa among tribo para makita sa mga batanon nga napaday butang sa mga tribo namo.
Pokek tut salapan ulitin at kilala. Akong pangalan po ay si Matanam Isidro Anak. Mayroon na akong 83 nga tuig. Nagtira dito sa Barangay Barakatan, Purukpor. Origin place namin ito. Ang akong ginatugtog, mga agong, gimbar, at saka yung kombeng. Marunong ako ng togo, at saka yung lantoy. Iba-iba pa. Nag-aral ako sa mga kanunuan, nakatuon ako sa mga 8 pa ang edad ng 8 pa. Dili man kayo lisod kay kung may talented ka, niya gifted ka sa music, dili man malisod.
Ako si Rodolfo Ado, nagapuyo ng barangay sa Atano. Ako natao sa 1952. Ang edad ako karon 69. Diri sa barangay sa Tanumay, gihimo ko nila sa usapod nga tiguang nga muhimo sa mga bamboo sound. Ako ilang gitugyanan. Itong mga lolo namo sa unang panahon, mga iyuan namo, nagahimo sila klase-klase nga inimo nila para adunay malingaw sa mga punila, sa mga asawa nila. Nagimo silang mga music sa parte sa kawayan, sa bagakay. Matugitiman anak ko sila. Na kami anto nagidad naming mga 9 o 10 anyos. Kami mga kadula na ko mga igagaw. Murag bitaw nagdula mga contest tag kinsay makahimo gyud sa hinimuan sa atong lolo. Ang lolo namo adunay premyo kinsa gyud makahimo. Tagahan mig kindi kinsay mahimo. Wato naagit mi anto dantod kabalon mi lain-lain na nahimo namo. Walay nakatudlo sa amo na. ang among kaugalingon lang una-una ang nagatawag kalam sa amo. Wala yung nagdiktar sa amo, ana-ana.
Since nga
Here's the list of, again, from the pages of the book, the list of the instruments that we found there. The Togo zither we saw in the video, the lantui, this is the flute, the kombing, similar to the kumbing we saw in the other tribe earlier. Here's another instrument, the palakpak, which is used to drive away birds when you're planting rice. Okay? There's a picture of the Togo, the zither. Okay, the next category are the colonial, which are adapted or modified instruments. These are technically Western instruments, but were modified using bamboo as material. These instruments were introduced from Europe via the Spanish conquistadores beginning in 1521, such as the church organ. Through time, many of these instruments would evolve and become uniquely Filipino, Filipino versions, such as the rondalia, which was Spanish but adapted into the Filipino rondalia. This is from the city of Las Piñas, the famous bamboo organ, which was built in 1797 by Father Diego Serra and fully completed in 1824. And then it was again restored in 1973 to 1975. It comprises of 1,031 bamboo pipes, which I believe when Diego Serra constructed it, he first submerged the bamboo poles into the river. Las Piñas is, into the beach, into the sea. Las Piñas is coastal, so he was able to do that, thereby being able to preserve the bamboo. Okay, let me play a bit of that for you. This is not covered by FPIC, so I'm free to do this. Oops, sorry. And the organist is Professor Armando Salarza, who also teaches organ at the University of the Philippines. Okay, some pages from the book. Today, the Las Piñas Church, the Las Piñas Bamboo Organ, is host to an international festival, annual festival of Baroque music. Okay, the other one is the rondalia, and this is from the Dipolog down in the south. The rondalia is a plucked string ensemble introduced by Spain, but Philippinized through the years. Here we have the Dipolog rondalia, founded by the luthier whose name is J. Sarita, who in 2014 began experimenting with bamboo as material. Okay, of course, traditionally the rondalia instruments are made of wood. So here, we have a banduria player in the midst here, but I don't know if she has a bamboo banduria now. So let's listen to that. This is, I think, the Peruvian waltz. Even the bass is made of bamboo. So these are the colonial and adapted or modified instruments. They're Western instruments, basically, Western language, but Philippinized probably by the use of local material, which is bamboo. Okay, pages from the book. This is the shop of J. Sarita, okay, the luthier. Okay, the third category is quite interesting, which I call the decolonial and hybrid. Now, these instrumental groups were established for the purpose of Filipino identity as separate from that of the colonial masters, but still utilizing the musical language of the latter. Here we find the Filipino alternative versions of the Spanish marching band or the European orchestra using native bamboo instruments, but still using the musical language of the West. The first is from the Bulacan area, the Banda Santa Clara. And you see here, it's made up of instruments of the marching band, but made of bamboo. Okay, I'll let you hear it first. By the way, they perform this annually in the Feast of Santa Clara in the streets, where if a lady wants to bear a child, wants to get pregnant, you have to dance in the street. So I always warn my students, if I play this, don't blame me if something happens. Okay, so again, it's related to the fertility dance that happens in May 17 to 19, which illustrates, by the way, the kind of Christianity, the hybrid Christianity that we have in the Philippines. You don't have such high fertility dances in the Catholic Church, but that is a survival of the pagan practices, in fact, to several female deities. Now, this kind of band, which we call musikong bongbong, actually is an appropriation, like I mentioned, of the Spanish marching band. It's an act of nationalization and, in fact, resistance during the Philippine Revolution in the late 19th century. The revolutionaries, beginning in 1850s and so on, refused to be part of Spanish regimen and so on, so they created themselves this band, recreated the instruments, okay? The French horn, the tuba or the bajo, the trumpet, flute, clarinet, baritone, trombone, basically horns and kazoos, okay? Sorry. Here's another page from the book, okay? And this one is from a different group. This is from this is the Bulacan Santa Clara group, by the way. And so you see, visual aesthetics is involved. It's not really the same principle that makes a French horn sound, but because it's really a bamboo kazoo in the shape of a French horn. Okay? So it's the symbolism really that counts here. Okay, the next group here is the Pangkat Kawayan. Let me play that for you. So the Pangkat Kawayan, or the Kawayan Ensemble, the Bamboo Ensemble in English, was formed in 1966 by Victor Toledo. What happened was he had a partnership with the then ambassador to Indonesia, the Filipino ambassador to Indonesia. And they had this idea of creating a bamboo symphony. And so they recruited farmers from central Luzon area. And Victor Toledo used the traditional bungbong, we call it. It's like a bass flute or horn, bamboo horn, along with the angklung, borrowed from Indonesia, of course. Okay. So this is another form of nationalization of the band, using the native bungbong, the flutes, and the angklung adapted from Indonesia. Okay. So the idea is, if it's bamboo, it's probably Filipino. It's more nationalistic. But of course, the language is still basically Western. Victor Toledo is the father of the composer Josefino Toledo and conductor. And so he has passed on into 3 generations that now manage the group. The Pangkat Kawayan has become world-renowned. They have done several tours already. And today, probably it's on its 3rd or 4th generation of members. Okay, finally, the last group is what I call invented or borrowed. These groups perform mostly in government-organized tourism-related festivals. The instruments are innovations of specific individuals based on indigenous instruments from the Philippines or instruments found in Southeast Asia or the Pacific, okay, the copies of that, or otherwise purely newly invented. The presentations are characterized by a fanciful imagination of the ethnic, okay, or the tribal. But indigenous peoples are not the one performing. It's people from the city dressed up to become imaginary tribesmen. So the music and the dances are invented as well. Of course, to the ethnomusicologist, this is the most problematic group, right? Because it's not really traditional music. But nevertheless, it's the most fascinating. Why is this going on? Why is this happening? And why is it so popular? Okay. So these practices are akin to the pageantry that you see in many Catholic countries. For example, the Carnival of Brazil, where there's dancing in the streets and so on. Okay? And also in New Orleans and in parts of Europe, you have this. Okay? This is the Tultugan Festival of Maasin, Iloilo. Maasin is the bamboo capital of the Philippines. They claim to be. They claim to produce the most bamboo in the country. And the Tultugan Festival was established by the town mayor in 1999. And so you will see the performance of so-called tribes highlighting bamboo in the life of the people of the town of Maasin. This happens in the 4th week of December. Instruments that you will see are adapted from indigenous or foreign cultures by maker Rosemary Bayag. These are competitions. These groups are competing against each other. Oops. Okay. Pages from the book. This is Miss Bayag, who is credited for inventing or adapting many of these instruments, beginning in 1999. Another festival is from Dulag, Leyte, called the Karatong Festival, okay? Celebrating the foundation day of the town of Dulag. They have been doing this festival for a long time, but beginning in 2019, they decided that everything should be done purely bamboo. Again, it's fanciful, it's imaginative. And this is the ending, close-up of the ensemble. You've probably seen similar instruments in Vietnam and probably in South Pacific. Another photograph of the dancing students. Okay. These are some of the websites related to the research. I can probably show this to you later if we have more time, but let me move forward now. So let me close so we can have some time for question and answer for those of you who are interested in asking questions. So again, it's truly an honor to speak before you today. When Achan Anatai told me that I will be the opening keynote, I said my talk will be quite specific and narrow, and that it's about our latest research on bamboo musical instruments and the book that we have produced. I was concerned that it might not hit the theme perfectly, the theme of celebrating the now. But she responded that bamboo can be quite symbolic and it's a good metaphor. Perhaps it is. I go back to the point I made earlier regarding the difference between the bronze and bamboo instruments. Bronze is high status, expensive, highly restricted, and produced through specialized technology. Bamboo, on the other hand, is abundant, affordable, for everyday use, and utilizes simple technology. This being so, bamboo music allows innovation and creativity, is ever evolving, and remains vibrant and popular and accessible. Isn't this the kind of music that we should be celebrating now? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor de la Peña, for the wonderful and inspiring talk, and congratulations that will be coming in 2 weeks, as you say. Oh, 3 weeks, okay, so very much looking forward. And I think I still insist on my answers to you earlier, that I think it's a perfect title, a topic to be presenting, especially about the now today. So maybe if I could ask my question first. Okay, I think let's stay in the now. Okay. Maybe my first questions, I mean, before any of our audience would kind of rest later on, so please join in the discussion as well. And maybe the first question is there any occasion that the bronze and the bamboo are performing together in the ensemble?
Traditionally, no. It's one layer of, probably one layer of culture. Bamboo is much older. If you want to talk about tuning, the tuning is quite different, right? But sometimes bamboo can be used as a replacement for the gong or the drum. So for example, in the South, you would have the kulintang ensemble, which would feature a drum, but some of the groups don't have the drum, so they use a bamboo pole. Okay? Or in the North, the gangsa rhythm, the gangsa is the flat gong, which is restricted, can be reproduced by bamboo instruments like stumping tubes and blades and pipes and so on. But they never mix together traditionally, except in modern performances for the tourists and so on.
Because I think
so it's a different layer of immigration actually that came to the country.
Yeah, because I'm quite curious in a way that I almost felt that from your, you have a feeling that the gong represents something that's permanent, as the piano or the organ or different things of classical music, let's say, that favors permanent. Like Southeast Asian music, I think we are dealing with a lot of temporality, the things that only stay at the moment at their own time, and especially after such a 2 years experience we had with COVID, I think we start to realize that things cannot be forever in some way, isn't it? And maybe, as you say, that is a perfect time to revisit our own cultures of bamboo music, as you represented. Thank you for that. So maybe if I could invite some of our audiences to maybe share some thoughts on this, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you. This is not cooperating, so I guess I'm not making sense.
We can hear you.
Okay. So first of all, thank you so much, Dr. for such.
I didn't recognize you with the mask on.
You know me. Okay, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation, and I can't wait to see and hear what this project will become in the future. I guess my question is not exactly about the music itself, but perhaps related to the music as a process, as you mentioned earlier. At some point in your slide, you mentioned about a free artist who was kind of like denied from his community to represent himself, to represent the community, but at the same time, he cannot also kind of represent what he's doing. So he's like stuck in a limbo, so to speak. So I'm wondering, how did you address that? Considering maybe probably you are working as a cultural broker, working between that community and that artist.
Okay. Since we are partnering with the Department of Science and Technology, and they're the ones funding it, we follow their decision. And their decision is, let's not include that to be safe. Don't show the video because it's not safe. They might get sued, and the penalties are high, right? As an ethnomusicologist, I would say, I don't care. But you're right, there's this, because I'm sick, this is an academic forum, right? This is not exploitation of the culture itself. But you have to understand that so many people have gone to these communities for academic reasons, but who gains from it? Not the people. But you're right. The problem is we have this law protecting the indigenous peoples, but it goes against other laws in the country, in the laws that develop, for example, the creative industries, right? So we as a country have to figure that out. I think the free and prior consent, informed consent, was originally not meant really for this. You know, when you're dealing, for example, with mining rights or land, then that becomes critical. But you know, flutes, and make people think somebody will steal that flute and sell it in the internet. That's the idea there. That's the fear that if I show you that if PGVIM would post this in the internet, that somebody will see it and copy it. Okay? It's somehow we say that's kind of ridiculous, but you understand where they're coming from. Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Let me try one more time with the plastic bamboos that I have in my hands now. I'm just wondering, do you see any chance of replacing materials, for example, plastics or any other types of things that might replace bamboo in the future, and would how much effect it will be on the people? I mean,
it's of course happening now, right? And when imported material, imported instruments come in at very low prices, mass-produced, how can you compete with that? But this is precisely the point of the Department of Science and Technology. They want to develop bamboo as a viable means of economic, of income for these communities. Like I said, there are 4 projects lined up, all the way to mass production and so on. I don't necessarily believe in that. I don't believe that you can mass produce the Joe harp so that people everywhere can play it during lunar eclipse, right? So, but maybe it will be effective in some types of instruments, but not effective in others.
There's one aspect of the talk that you've mentioned about someone, like, I'm not sure I remember the name of the tribe, his own instrument. I think this is something that we really miss in this generation. We no longer make our own instruments. And how do you see that missing part of music making?
Yeah, that's the danger here when bureaucrats and technocrats look at culture, you know? Look at the flute, how one person made the flute or the zither, and say, we will come in and help you mass produce that. We will create a machine so that the sound is better, that the tuning is better, and the cost could be more effective, and so on, right? I don't suppose that will benefit this person. It will benefit somebody else, right? So again, my learning here is, as an ethnomusicologist, you have to continue. Before, my point was, I don't have to do anything with you. You do your own research, scientific, economic, whatever. But probably the better way to do it is, you know, partner with them and try to convince them with the wisdom that comes from your own perspective, which is not entirely the true wisdom of all. It's a combination of their point of view and my point of view.
And hope that maybe in the future, like this knowledge of how to build an instrument, invent a new instrument, could come back to the musical circles and music. Any questions from our friends in the floor? Or maybe remarks from our Korean friends of, like, is there any kind of similar instruments that you have, or similar materials? What types of wood that you are preserving in Korea? Not a pressures though, but just kind of asking, pass on. And in that case, maybe I ask one more question from you, if you kindly, because I can see that these possibilities of making an instrument see that in terms of the ideas of temporarities of the bamboo, is the science department were looking for some way to make it more permanent? And if they're trying to make bamboo more permanent, would it change the way we understand the instruments or the traditions that ties together with it or not?
Yes, so this is exactly what my concern is, right? You go ahead, of course, if you produce something, you want to make it better, you want to make it sellable, and of course, what is sellable is something that is not temporary, right? You don't want to buy something that will break soon. That will change completely the whole musical philosophy of, a
being
temporary...
able to be out of being
Right.
able to be broken in some part, isn't it?
Right, because you go ahead and make your own. The other thing is, not only is it easy to do, but it is also very personalized. For example, some of the flutes, some of the nose flutes in the north are marked with the same tattoo markings. And when young boys go around, they have the nose flute in their bag or in their ear. And when they die at a young age, the flute is buried with them. So it's a very close affinity that you will not see in the more prestigious instruments.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't want a piano to be buried with me for sure. I think that's one thing. And in some way, I think like what you mentioned, that making an instrument of love or something when the couples get married, and how you mentioned earlier about the bamboo being a currency. You can buy lands, you can buy farms, you can buy things with gold. So it's a completely two different polars. And hopefully, maybe we can conclude a little bit here, and then maybe you should actually. I think you enjoyed our coming days of symposium, because we'll have more speakers talking about making their own instruments, like Dr. Enrico Bertelli. He was working with electronics circuits and making sewing together with your clothes and all this kind of thing. And another person, Professor John Joseph Coronel, who was here earlier, I think he was designing also the instrument that is, both of them in computer world, in computer coding, is equally fragile to the bamboo, I have a feeling. So maybe these traditions of making your own instruments is coming back, and maybe of different forms, but we would love to see them intertwined at some point in the future. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. It's been an
the
honor.
Dean of the
Thank
UP
you.
University of the Philippines. Thank you.